My name's Jordan, I'm 42, and until last year, I thought I had a stable, quiet life. You know, mortgage paid off, stable job in IT, a wife who'd been with me for almost 15 years, and a teenage daughter who kept to herself but was good at heart. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes, things fall apart slowly. Quietly. Almost like someone turning off the lights, one switch at a time. It started with late meetings. My wife, Rachel, started coming home late. At first, it was once or twice a week. Then it became almost every evening. She claimed her company was restructuring, and she had to prove herself to keep her managerial position. Okay. I trusted her. I've always trusted her. Maybe that was my mistake. But one night, she came home, freshly showered, hair still damp, perfume I didn't recognize. She said she had dinner with her boss. I didn't say a word. But I did start watching. I didn't confront her. I didn't want to be that guy. But I quietly opened a new folder on my laptop. Named it something boring, Q3 taxes. In that folder, I started saving screenshots. Messages. Bank alerts. Uber receipts she forgot to delete from our shared account. 2 weeks later, a receipt from a hotel popped up. She never mentioned a business trip. That's when I really knew. I didn't rage. I didn't throw things. I just sat there. My hands were trembling, but my mind was calm. Cold. Rachel didn't know I'd done a lot of reading about divorce law back when my friend Mark went through hell with his ex. I remembered every warning. If you even suspect divorce is coming, act like a chess player. Quiet. Strategic. Ahead of the game. So I did. I scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney. Not to file, just to understand my rights. I learned something important. In our state, once divorce papers are filed, your assets are frozen unless a judge says otherwise. But before that, you can move, prepare, protect. Legally. So I opened a separate bank account. I redirected my paycheck. I stopped contributing to our joint savings and started building a quiet war chest. I also pulled my name from the joint investment account, the one she barely knew how to manage, and moved those funds to a trust in my name. It wasn't hiding. It was protecting. I didn't want revenge. I wanted to survive. Then came the talk. Rachel sat me down one Friday night, after our daughter had gone to bed. She looked serious, the way HR managers do when they're about to fire someone. She said she needed space. That we'd grown apart. That she wasn't happy. I nodded. I said I understood. I didn't cry. Didn't plead. She seemed surprised. She said we should do things amicably, no lawyers, just mediation. I agreed. But inside, I knew what was coming. A week later, she moved in with a friend. I already knew who he was. His name was Alan. Mid-40s. Divorced. Worked in marketing. I'd seen his LinkedIn. He wore scarves in summer. Rachel didn't know I'd already met with my lawyer. Didn't know I'd already compiled a detailed financial report. That I'd already moved 70% of our liquid assets to a protected account under my name, all legal, all documented. 2 weeks later, she served me divorce papers. And that's when she realized. She was too late. She expected to split everything 50-50ths. But our state didn't work that way, not with pre-separation financial movements, documented infidelity, and proof that I was the primary financial contributor for the last 15 years. Her lawyer tried to paint me as controlling. My lawyer responded with timestamps, records, and a timeline that showed how she left, how she had lied, and how I had quietly prepared for a clean separation. She got her freedom. But not the house. Not the savings. Not the car. A year later, I'm rebuilding. It's not easy. I miss what we used to be, not what we became. Our daughter lives with me most of the time. She knows more than she lets on. Kids always do. Rachel? I hear she and Alan broke up after 6 months. I guess real life doesn't work the way their fantasy did. If you suspected your partner was planning something behind your back, would you prepare like I did, or confront them right away? Have you ever stayed silent just to gather the truth? People think the hardest part of a divorce is signing the papers. It's not. The hardest part is the silence that follows. The quiet mornings when you no longer hear someone in the kitchen. The empty dinner table. The realization that you now set just one plate and don't have to ask, do you want tea? You don't realize how much of your daily life revolves around another person, until they're gone. 3 months after the divorce, the house still smelled like her shampoo. Every time I opened the closet, I half expected to see one of her jackets. But she was gone. And strangely, I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt tired. I threw myself into work. Started running in the mornings. Volunteered at my daughter's school. Anything to avoid the silence. People kept asking me if I'd start dating again. I'd laugh it off. Too soon. Not interested. Trying to focus on myself. But one Friday afternoon, at a local bookstore, I met someone. And no. It wasn't some movie moment where we reached for the same book. It was much simpler than that. Her name was Emily. She worked behind the counter, cataloging new arrivals. She wasn't flashy. She didn't try to stand out. But there was a calmness about her. Like she didn't need to be noticed, and that made her impossible to ignore. I asked her about a book, and we talked for 15 minutes. Then I left. Next week, I came back. We talked again, this time about coffee. And traffic. And her favorite childhood novel. It became a routine. A quiet, unspoken ritual. No pressure. No agenda. And for the first time in a long time, I felt safe. But something inside me was broken. One night, she asked if I wanted to grab a coffee sometime after her shift. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was scared. Not of her. Of myself. What if I couldn't trust again? What if every smile felt suspicious? What if I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop? I told her, gently, that I wasn't ready. She nodded. Didn't press. Just said, whenever you are, I'll still be here. And somehow, that meant more than anything anyone had said to me in months. Meanwhile, Rachel started texting. Random messages. Hope you're okay. He wasn't what I thought. I miss our family. I never replied. Not because I hated her. But because I knew if I opened that door, even a crack, I'd be letting back in the storm I'd barely survived. Our daughter noticed. She once asked me, would you ever forgive Mom? I looked at her and said, forgiveness is easy. Trust isn't. She nodded. That's the thing about kids. They understand more than they say. After 6 months, I did take Emily out for that coffee. And then another. And another. But I was honest with her. I told her about my divorce. About the betrayal. About how I wasn't sure if I could ever fully trust someone again. She listened. Didn't flinch. Just sipped her coffee and said, you don't have to rush. We can just exist. That word, exist, felt like permission to breathe. I wish I could say the rest was easy. It wasn't. Some nights, I'd panic if she didn't text back right away. Some mornings, I'd stare at her phone on the counter and feel an urge to check it, even though she never gave me a reason to doubt her. But Emily never made me feel like I had to apologize for my scars. She just kept showing up. Patient. Present. Steady. One night, I told her, I still don't know if I can promise anything long-term. She looked at me and said, I'm not asking for a promise. I'm just asking for today. And somehow, that felt like the most honest kind of love. Rachel eventually stopped messaging. I heard she moved to another city. Tried to restart her life. I hope she finds peace. As for me, I'm learning to live without needing everything to be certain. Because maybe love isn't about never being hurt. Maybe it's about knowing the risk, and choosing to care anyway. Have you ever loved again after betrayal? How do you rebuild trust when your heart still remembers the pain? Have you ever met someone who made you feel safe again, not excited, not thrilled, just safe? They say time heals all wounds. What they don't say is that sometimes, time just puts a blanket over the pain and hopes you forget where you buried it. It had been a year and a half since the divorce. Almost a year since Emily and I started officially dating. We'd built something gentle. Something calm. She didn't need grand gestures, and I didn't need to pretend I was whole. She just let me be, and slowly, I found myself becoming someone I could actually recognize again. I thought the storm had passed. But one rainy evening, the doorbell rang. And there she was. Rachel. She looked different. Not in a bad way, just worn. Smaller somehow. Like life had taken something from her that no court ever could. She stood on my doorstep, soaked in rain, clutching her coat like it was the only thing keeping her together. I'm not here to cause problems, she said. I just needed to talk. To explain. Everything in me wanted to shut the door. But I didn't. I stepped aside. We sat in the kitchen, the same one where we used to laugh, argue, make plans. She didn't touch the tea I gave her. Just stared at the steam and said quietly. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I didn't respond. She continued. He wasn't what I thought. He was charming, sure. But it wasn't real. It was an escape, and a stupid one. I was tired of feeling invisible. And you were always so in control. So stable. I mistook that for distance. I still didn't say a word. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. I'm not here to win you back. I know that door's closed. But, our daughter deserves to know that I didn't just walk away for nothing. That I realized I broke something sacred. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to forgive. But I'd spent too long rebuilding what she shattered. I told her that I appreciated the apology, and that it was better late than never. She asked if we could, at the very least, be on better terms. For our daughter's sake. I nodded. But that night, when Emily came over and saw the extra mug in the sink, she knew. I told her everything. And to my surprise, she didn't get angry. She just sat beside me and asked, "Are you okay?" That's when I realized something important. Emily wasn't afraid of my past. She just wanted to be part of my present, and maybe, if I let her, my future too. Weeks passed. Rachel kept her distance, but I could feel her trying to reinsert herself. Text messages. Comments on old memories. Suggesting family dinners for our daughter's sake. It felt strategic. I started doubting again. Not Emily, but myself. Was I being too harsh? Too guarded? Was I punishing Rachel, or protecting myself? One evening, while walking with Emily through the park, I asked her. Do you think people like me ever truly heal? Or do we just learn how to hide the cracks better? She looked at me and said. You're not cracked. You're weathered. That's different. Weathered people don't break easy, they bend and come back stronger. I didn't say anything. But I knew, deep down, I wanted to believe her. A few months later, I proposed. Not with fireworks. Not with a speech. Just a quiet moment on a Sunday morning, coffee in hand, sunlight creeping through the blinds. She said yes. And for the first time in years. I didn't feel afraid of commitment. But life has a sense of humor. 2 weeks before the wedding, I got a letter. No stamp. Just slipped under my front door. It was from Rachel. A handwritten note. She wrote. I know I've lost you. And I accept that. But please, if there's a piece of you that ever loved me, don't cut me out of our daughter's future completely. I will always carry the shame of what I did. I'll never ask you to forget. But maybe one day, you'll forgive me enough to let me watch her grow. Even from a distance. I didn't show Emily the letter. Not out of secrecy. But because it wasn't part of our story. It was closure for another one. The wedding was small. Close friends. Family. No drama. Our daughter walked me down the aisle. She whispered, I like her. She makes you less grumpy. I laughed harder than I had in years. As I stood across from Emily, holding her hands, I realized. Sometimes life gives you a second chance. Not because you earned it. But because you survived long enough to recognize it when it comes. Rachel didn't attend. She wasn't invited. But she did send a small envelope the next day. Inside was a photo from years ago, me holding our daughter in the hospital, tears in my eyes. On the back, she wrote. You were always a good man. I just wasn't ready to appreciate it. Don't let anyone else make that same mistake. Especially you. I didn't cry. But I did sit there a long time, holding that photo. Can people truly change, or do they just become better at pretending? Have you ever been offered an apology after you moved on? What did you do with it? Marriage, the second time around, feels different. Not better. Not worse. Just, more intentional. When Emily and I got married, we didn't promise forever like teenagers who hadn't seen the dark side of love. We promised, as long as we're honest. As long as we try. As long as we grow. The honeymoon was short, 3 days in the mountains. No phone signal. No social media. No distractions. Just silence, snow, and the weight of finally letting go of old ghosts. And then life returned. Bills. Work. School pickups. Groceries. Schedules. Ordinary things that feel extraordinary when they're shared with someone who doesn't make you flinch when they're quiet for too long. But no life is without cracks. About 6 months into our marriage, Emily found an old envelope tucked away in my drawer, the one from Rachel. The photo of me in the hospital with our daughter. I hadn't meant to hide it. I'd just, never known where to put it. She didn't say anything at first. She just stared at the photo. Then she looked up and asked. Do you still think about her? I hesitated. Because I've learned, honesty isn't about blurting out everything. It's about saying what's true, and kind, at the same time. So I told her. Sometimes. But not the way you think. Not with longing. More like, a bruise that aches when it rains. She nodded. Said nothing else. But that night, she slept facing away from me. A week later, we had our first real fight. It wasn't loud. No one shouted. But it was sharp. Precise. She said, you carry her shadow into this house like a suitcase. You say you've moved on, but some part of you still lives in the past. And I didn't deny it. Because she was right. I started therapy again. Not because I was falling apart, but because I didn't want to fall back. One session in, the therapist said something that stayed with me. Trauma doesn't end when the event ends. It ends when you stop preparing for it to happen again. That line broke something open in me. I realized, I was still living like a man waiting to be betrayed. Even though Emily had given me no reason to doubt her. Meanwhile, our daughter, Mia, turned 17. She was becoming a woman right in front of me. More independent. More thoughtful. And more curious. One night, she asked if she could talk to Emily, alone. They sat on the porch for over an hour. I watched from the window, unable to hear their words. Later that night, Emily told me what Mia had asked. She wanted to know if I was scared to love someone who's been broken. I asked, "What did you say?" Emily smiled sadly and said, "I told her we're all broken in some way." "But your dad? He chose to heal out loud. That's brave." I couldn't hold back tears. Then came the message. Rachel had been diagnosed with a serious illness. Not terminal, but serious enough to change things. She wanted to see Mia more often. Said she wanted to make up for lost time. Mia came to me, torn. "She hurt you. I know that. But she's still my mom. What do you say to that?" I told her the truth. "I don't trust her. But I trust you. If you want to see her more, I won't stop you." Rachel and I met briefly. Just once. In a hospital cafeteria. She looked tired. Older. Not physically, emotionally. She thanked me for raising our daughter so well. Said she hoped Emily knew how lucky she was. I didn't tell her that luck had nothing to do with it. That choice had everything to do with it. I left that meeting feeling something strange. Not bitterness. Not forgiveness. Just peace. Emily and I had our second wedding anniversary last week. Nothing fancy. Dinner at home. A walk after. Mia baked a cake, lopsided, but delicious. And I looked at them both, these two women who entered my life after everything fell apart. And realized something I wish I could tell every man who's ever been hurt. You are not defined by who broke you. You are defined by who you become after. Do you believe that real healing happens with time, or with the right people beside you? Have you ever learned to trust again, even when your heart told you not to?